Hello, welcome to this week's lesson on Mr. Vermeer's class. I'm Brian Vermeer, and we're beginning a new series today, spending about the next 7 weeks or so on the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers is the fourth book of the Bible. It is the fourth book of the Torah, or the section of the Bible that we call the Law. It was written by Moses, and it gives an account of the Israelites as they journey to the Promised Land. At the beginning, they're still at Mount Sinai, and at the end, they are on the doorstep, ready to cross the river into the land of Canaan. Before I begin, I'd like to remind you, if you enjoy these lessons, please leave a like on the video. Please subscribe to the Mr. Vermeer's Class YouTube page. Please follow the Mr. Vermeer's Class Facebook page. And if you can, please support me on the Mr. Vermeer's Class Patreon page. YouTube doesn't pay me anything. And so for as little as $5 a month, you can get some exclusive videos that you won't be able to get on YouTube on the Patreon page. All right, so the book of Numbers. Why do we call it that? We call it that because within the book there are two numberings or two censuses of the people of Israel that Moses undertakes. We'll talk about those a little more in a minute. The Hebrew name for the book is Sefer Bamidbar, which literally means in the wilderness, because that's what the book actually covers. It covers the wandering of the Israelites from Sinai through the wilderness to the land of Canaan. When the book begins, they are celebrating the second Passover. So it's 1 year after the Exodus. It's 1 year after they have left the land of Egypt. They are still at Mount Sinai, where they've been when God gave them the law. God gave them the 10 Commandments and the rest of the law. And now they're getting ready to pack up and move on straight toward the land of Canaan. And this is why the first census is taken. Before they leave Sinai, God asks Moses to take a census of all the people, get a count of how many men especially will be able to serve in the army, because the plan is to go straight from Sinai up to Canaan and conquer the land of Canaan. We're going to find out that that does not actually go according to plan. They get there, they chicken out. God makes them wander in the wilderness, Sefer Bamidbar, for 40 years. Then they approach the land of Canaan from the east side, right across the Jordan River, and they take another census, another numbering. And again, that's where the book of Numbers gets its name. This first section that we're going to read today, though, is in Numbers chapter 9, and it talks a little bit about the tabernacle. The tabernacle was a portable place of worship that God had them build. You can get detailed instructions for building the tabernacle in the book of Leviticus. It's part of the book of Leviticus that most people get bogged down when they try to read the Bible, because it's just a series of instructions. And something I find fascinating about this that a lot of people don't think about is just how detailed these instructions are. We can build a tabernacle just like the one they built from the instructions that are in the book of Leviticus. And this also, to me, provides evidence that the books of Leviticus, in fact, the entire Torah, the entire first 5 books of the Bible, were written by Moses. A lot of modern scholars would have you think that these books weren't actually written by Moses, that in fact they were written probably not until the exile to Babylon hundreds of years later, after the temple had been destroyed and the Israelites had been taken captive. And to that then I would say, well, if they didn't write it until the Babylonian captivity, why would they take the time to write all these detailed instructions on how to build a structure, how to build this portable place of worship, which hasn't even existed for hundreds of years, which was taken down hundreds of years ago and will probably never be built again? Why would they have written all these instructions? Well, the answer is, of course, because this book was actually written by Moses, and Moses wrote these instructions down as God gave them to him so that they could build it. In other words, all the detailed instructions for the building of the tabernacle and all of the things that are to go in the tabernacle and where they are to be placed and all that is evidence to me that the book was written before the tabernacle was built rather than hundreds of years after it was built and then taken down, destroyed, and even the temple that was based on it was destroyed. All right, but let's talk a little bit about the tabernacle. Again, it was this tent, this place of worship. The most important thing in it was the Ark of the Covenant. And after they get the instructions, the people donate all the materials to it. And in fact, the book of Leviticus gives details as to exactly how much of each item was given. And then it talks about how it was built. So let's look now at the book of Numbers, chapter 9, verse 15 and 16, after they have built the tabernacle and they're beginning to worship in it and what God is going to do with it. So chapter 9, book of Numbers, verses 15 and 16. It says, "On the day the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of the testimony, and it appeared like fire above the tabernacle from evening until morning. It remained that way continuously. The cloud would cover it, appearing like fire at night." So on the day that they set up the tabernacle, when they pitched the tent, put it all together, put all the things in it, it says this cloud comes and covers the tabernacle. Well, what's this cloud? If you read way back in the book of Exodus, when they first leave the land of Egypt, it says that God went before them, showing them the way to go. And the way he appeared to them was during the day as a pillar of cloud, this thick cloud going from the ground all the way up to the sky in a column. And at night he would appear as a pillar of fire so that they could always see him. And I think that's something important there. God is always there. That's his reminder for them. And it says here that when they built this tabernacle would be the place where Moses would go in and actually meet with God. This is where the Ark of the Covenant was placed. And this pillar of cloud came down and settled over the tabernacle right above where the Ark of the Covenant would be. And during the day, it would appear as a cloud, and at night, it would appear as a pillar of fire. And again, this is simply a reminder that God is always with them, which is kind of interesting to me because throughout the book of Numbers, a common theme is that of rebellion, of turning against God, and rejecting God's provision for them. We find that they've already rejected the food, and God is having to send them quail and manna. Later on, they're going to reject God's leadership. They're going to say, "Moses, who made you our leader?" Even Moses' brother and sister are going to get in on that. They're going to reject the water that God wants to send them. And that's just a whole theme throughout this book of Numbers. Then finally, when they get to Canaan, they reject going into Canaan. They decide, we're not going to do that. We can't do that. But the point is they do all this rejecting and all this rebelling while they can see the presence of God right there with them. And people ask today, why doesn't God just show himself? He showed himself to the Israelites, and they still turned away from him. So I don't think, God doing miraculous signs among us would necessarily bring more people to God. There are people who say, well, I'd believe if, God would just show a miracle. No, I don't think you would. If you can't believe in God without the miracles, then you won't believe in God even with the miracles. You might say, oh, wow, and you might, do like a Nebuchadnezzar and repent for a little while, but then turn away again later because you don't have real faith. The point here is God is with them, and God is with them the whole time. It says the cloud was over there all day, and the pillar of fire was there all night. So they could always look toward the tabernacle. And the tabernacle was set up in the middle of camp. They organized their camp so that the tabernacle would be in the middle, and the 12 tribes of Israel would be arranged, 3 on each side of the tabernacle. So everyone could look toward the tabernacle. Everyone could look toward and see God right there. Let's continue on now and look at verses 17 to 21 to see, again, some of the significance of this pillar of cloud and fire being over the tabernacle. It says, whenever the cloud was lifted up above the tent, the Israelites would set out. At the place where the cloud stopped, there the Israelites camped. At the Lord's command, the Israelites set out, and at the Lord's command, they camped. As long as the cloud stayed over the tabernacle, they camped. Even when the cloud stayed over the tabernacle many days, the Israelites carried out the Lord's requirement and did not set out. Sometimes the cloud remained over the tabernacle for only a few days. They would camp at the Lord's command and set out at the Lord's command. Sometimes the cloud remained only from evening until morning. When the cloud lifted in the morning, they set out. Or if it remained a day and a night, they moved out when the cloud lifted. On the day the tabernacle was set up, Sorry, I've got a little repeat there in my notes. The point here is, the cloud would settle over the tabernacle. When the cloud lifted away from the tabernacle and began to move, the Israelites would tear down their camp and would get up and follow the cloud. When the cloud stopped, that's where they would set up camp. And they would stay there as long as the cloud stayed there. Now, originally, again, the plan was to go straight from Sinai to Canaan. But after they get to Canaan, they reject the plan to go in, and God makes them wander in the wilderness for 40 years. Well, you can see here now they don't spend that whole time wandering. They'll set up a camp, and they may stay there for months and then get up and move to another camp. Or they may set up a camp and then the next morning get up and move. In other words, when the cloud moves, they move. When the cloud stops, they stop. So what's the lesson of this? The lesson of this is God is going to move when God is ready to move. It says sometimes they would camp in the place for a few days. Sometimes they might camp just overnight. Sometimes they might stay 2 days. Sometimes they might stay a week. Sometimes they might stay a month or longer. Sometimes we're ready to do things for God. We're ready to get out and work for God. We've got this calling, and we think that we're going to do these great things, through God. And that's a great attitude to have. And we're ready to go out and get started, and then we fail. Well, why do we fail? Well, sometimes we fail because even though we're ready to begin, God is not ready for us to begin. We need to learn to take our direction from God. We need to learn to wait on God. God will move when He's ready to move. God is going to do things when He's ready to do things. We need to follow His lead and not try to take the lead from Him. They didn't get up and move and wait for the pillar of cloud to follow them. The cloud would move and they would follow the cloud. Why? Because God knows where He's going. And our job is to follow him. He doesn't follow us. And that may mean sometimes God telling you, I'm not ready for you to move yet. You camp. You prepare, but don't move yet. Maybe God doesn't have the circumstances quite where he wants them for us to begin our ministry. Maybe God does want us to quickly get up and move. But the point here is we need to take our cues from God. Wait for him to tell us when it's time to go. And when he tells you it's time to stop and rest, then you need to stop and rest. And yes, sometimes God tells us that you need to stop and rest. You can get burned out even doing God's work. So sometimes God wants you to just stop and rest, breathe a little while he gets things ready for the next part. So we wait for God. We move when God tells us to move. Let's finish up this passage, though, looking at verses 22 and 23. It says, whether it was 2 days, a month, or longer, the Israelites camped and did not set out as long as the cloud stayed over the tabernacle. But when it was lifted, they set out. They camped at the Lord's command, and they set out at the Lord's command. They carried out the Lord's requirement according to his command through Moses. The key words there are, they camped at the Lord's command, and they set out at the Lord's command. Now, when they camped, God did not tell them how long they were going to be there. God did not say, okay, y'all get settled in, we're going to be here for a month. Or, okay, we're only going to be here for 3 days. Or, don't unpack, we're leaving again in the morning. They had to be ready to go when God was ready for them to go. It says when the pillar of cloud moved, they would have to tear down the tabernacle, pack it all up, all the things that went along with it. The priests carrying the ark would go out first. The others would follow them. There was a specific order that they would all travel in. And remember, we're talking about possibly up to 1.5 million people. So, it took some organizing to get everything together and, ready to go. Which meant they always had to be ready because they did not know when God was going to say, now it's time to go again. Are you ready to do the things that God has for you to do? If God tells you to set out tomorrow and begin this ministry, are you ready for you to do it? If God says, no, wait for a while, are you ready to sit and wait? We don't know when God's going to move through us. We don't know when God is going to want us to do something. So we need to always be ready to move when God tells us to move. Because God will tell you to move when everything is right. And when he's ready for you to move. So what do we need to get out of this? Wait for God and be ready to go when he tells you to go. And then when he tells you to stop, stop. God knows what he's doing. God knows where he's leading you. And God will get you there. Whatever it is he has planned for your life, he's got the plan. We just need to follow his plan. And that plan may involve moving quickly at times. That plan may involve stopping for a while at times. But God's plan is perfect. So we take our cues from him. I hope you enjoyed this first lesson. We're going to continue on in the book of Numbers again for about the next 6-7 weeks. So I'll see you again next time.